The regular meeting of the Southern Shores Town Council for July the 5th, 2016 is now in session. Ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, if you would. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I normally just ask people to join me in a moment of silence. Let them kind of pick their own thing they want to be silent about. But we've had so many tragedies in the world in the last month or so, with the terrorist attacks in Orlando, the terrorist attacks in Istanbul, in Turkey. It can't help but make you have your heart go out for those people who are suffering through these things. We're kind of sheltered from all that, at least we think we are, but it can happen anywhere. So just be thinking about some of those folks who have been impacted by that, by these incidents over the past month or so, and even before that. We're seeing a crazy world. Anyway, thank you. Thank you. Council, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda's been approved. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda, Council, tab 1 in your book.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Consent agenda has been approved. This time I'll call on Sheila Kane, our town clerk, to give us our staff report, our town planners report.
Permitting for the month of June, there was 15 zoning permits issued, 37 building permits, 5 new single-family dwellings.
Not yet.
Yeah, it's coming.
5 new single-family, 1 wireless co-location, 2 additions, 1 accessory, and 28 others. There are 19 single-family dwellings currently under construction. Total amount of fees collected is $21,179.70. And Westlake to tell you that the co-location is T-Mobile, and there is 1 more thing.
That was going to be my question. Who's the co-locator? Thank you. Did everyone hear that? The co-locator for on the tower, the AT&T American Tower, where we have our cell service for some of us, is T-Mobile, and there's space for 1 more there if someone else wants to locate. If you have T-Mobile, then your service should improve a little bit. I have Verizon, and my service improved when AT&T went in there, so I don't know. I can't explain the system. I don't even try. David Cole, our police chief, his report. Good evening, David, or good afternoon.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The Southern Shores Police Department's monthly report for the month of June 2016. We had a total of 989 calls for service. That compared to last year of 2015, that's about 130 more than we had last year for the same month. As you can see, just on a breakdown of the calls for service, officers conducted 158 traffic stops. We responded to 15 alarms, 18 suspicious conditions. We conducted 67 residence checks, another 205 business checks, and an additional 131 extra patrols. Those were mostly vacant homes. And as a breakdown for the actual incidents, which are crimes that were reported, we had a total of 22. As you can see the breakdown up there, 7 of those were larcenies, 10 were drug-related violations, 1 DWI, 1 alcohol violation, that was an underage drinking, and 2 were for traffic-related, and the other, which is 1, that was a domestic. Criminal arrest, we had 2 arrests for the drug violations. Obviously, we had 1 arrest for the driving while intoxicated as well, and also for the alcohol violation. We had a total of 6 motor vehicle accidents. Out of that 158 traffic stops that the officers conducted, they issued 57 actual written citations and another 102 written warning citations. And we handed out 32 ordinance violations, and you can see the breakdown there. Just to give you a little bit of a rundown on this last weekend, it was very busy. We had a total of 176 calls for service. This is just for Saturday and Sunday. That's about 4 calls per hour that 3 officers handled. On Saturday, we had 3 officers working the regular shifts. 2 of those were mid-shift, 1 was working during the day, plus we had 2 that were somehow got the short stick, and we got stuck directing traffic at 158 as well. We had a total of 5 motor vehicle accidents on Saturday and Sunday. Officers handed out 21 traffic citations. 18 of those are what we considered selective enforcement, and a breakdown of that is they were speeding tickets that were handed out. 7 were handed out on COs. We hit that hard and heavy until it got to the point where we couldn't even get the patrol cars out of there because it got really jammed up pretty quick. They handed out 2 speeding tickets, violations on Hickory, and they were tied up on that for a while because they also got drugs out of one of the traffic stops. And we had 3 speeding citations issued on Wax Myrtle as well. And we had an officer, one of those 3, that was monitoring the stop sign at Dogwood when possible, in between handling all the calls for service, and he handed out 4 stop sign violations for that day. Any questions? Summer is here.
What was Sunday like?
Saturday.
Saturday? Did you have any statistics for Sunday, what you did?
That was Sunday, Saturday and Sunday.
Oh, Saturday, and
Yes,
it was
sir.
combination.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Sunday seemed to get backed up a little bit later in the day.
Yes.
Which surprised a lot of people. I think they thought, oh, good, the worst of it was Saturday. That wasn't the case. It got just as busy on Sunday. But unfortunately, we had a lot less officers working on Sunday. So, Any other questions?
Just one thing, on the drug violations up there under incidences 10, how does that compare to last year? Is it about the same, going up?
Drugs are hit and miss. You know, it's
I didn't know if there was any trend you could,
not really. There's a lot of drugs on this beach. I'm here to tell you.
Right.
I've told you that since I've been here. I've been here 10 years, and there's a lot of drugs on this beach. And the main reason is because people are willing to pay for it over here a lot more, almost probably 10 times. They can make 10 times what they make over in Elizabeth City by selling it here. So, yes. Anything else?
Thank you, David.
Thank
Good
you.
report. Appreciate it. Ed Limbacher, our fire chief. Good afternoon, Ed.
Good afternoon, everybody.
good afternoon.
Okay, for the month of June, fire department responded to 62 total calls. And once again, for us also, summer is here, so building fires, there were 2. Fires within a building, other than the building, there was 1, just like a cooking, that's indication of something that was contained to the area of origin. Water vehicle fire, which is basically a boat fire. 36 EMS calls, 2 motor vehicle accidents, 1 motor vehicle accident with no injuries, 1 extrication from a motor vehicle, 1 surf rescue, 1 heat or short circuit, 1 assist police agency, 3 public service, which are basically public appearances. Most of them were on the 4th. Dispatch canceling route, 2 of those. Smoke scare or odor of smoke, 2 of those. 3 alarms due to malfunction. 3 smoke detectors, no fire, unintentional. 3 alarms, no fire, unintentional, for a total, again, 62 calls this month. And that's just slightly behind last year. Last year was 64. Anybody have any questions?
No, I don't have any.
Counsel? Thank you, Ed.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate it. This time I'll call for general public comment. And I'll call your name as you signed up on the list. Ann Loeffner. Good afternoon, Ann.
Good
Ann.
afternoon, Mayor. Good afternoon, Council. Ann Loeffner. I reside at 25 East Dogwood Trail. My husband and I have been residents there for going on 12 years. We are the adjacent property owners to the land at 29 East Dogwood and Duck Road that you are considering, or the possible acquisition of that property for stormwater maintenance for that intersection, and we support it wholeheartedly. We all know that it's desperately needed. We know that there are potential for many accidents at that intersection. Every time we get a heavy rain, the rains this past weekend have been just led to it. The water doesn't dissipate quickly when it's standing on the road, whereas if it goes into the sand, it will dissipate quickly. So we don't have any mosquitoes or anything that possibly could decide to breed in this area. People, if with all of the rain and standing water over on the pedestrian pathway there, people cannot use it to walk, jog, ride their bikes, anything along this line during storms because of the water standing there. And we just hope that the council will take that into consideration in acquiring this property. I don't know of any other possible solution to that stormwater there other than tearing up the road and rebuilding everything. And not only time-wise, but cost-wise, I think that would be prohibited. So this sounds like the best course. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ann. I apologize. I've got someone on Gravy Pond, and I can't read the name. Hi
My
there.
name is Pat Ringwald, and I live at 75 Gravy Pond
Okay.
Lane. I really want to talk to you about the old business consideration of number 7 Skyline Road property. One of your members asked me to walk it. I did. I think it's a lovely piece of property. When I walked it, in the back on Saturday, you could hear nothing of the traffic. It was a lovely place, really. It would be a lovely place for a park, and that was evidently that's on the agenda to talk about it. Several things came to mind. If you decide for a park, for instance, I think your garden clubs would be more than happy to walk through, give you some ideas, so on and so forth, and maybe even volunteer. The other thing that came to mind there was that you have one building that sits by itself, and it seems like it's in good repair. I don't know what you might use it for, but if you choose to leave it, you might have people who paint murals on sides of buildings, paint trees and so on and so forth. It would make it acceptable, I think. The other thought that I had was that behind this property, I think, goes down the hill, and I believe that Southern Shores Realty owns that piece of property, which ends up on South Spindrift, okay, down at the circle. And I think it would be very nice if they would allow us, the city, to have trails down there. Have some professional people cut the trails, check the trees, don't cut anything that is worthwhile.
Desirable,
Leave it
right.
and walk. And I think either the national parks or the forest people might be happy to do that for you. I think it would be a nice area. A couple positive things, it would connect Chickahawk and Southern Shores, which would be nice. The other thing is evidently the marketplace is improving or enlarging or doing something in the next couple of years. It would be a nice way to walk down there. Anything that you can do for trees and green space, I think the town needs to look at. You don't have a whole lot of it, okay? That's all my comment.
Thank you very much. Good comment. Bill Broadus?
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'd also like to reiterate Ann's comments about supporting the project at the corner of Duck Road and East Dogwood Trail. She lives at one side of that lot. I live right across Duck Road. I see firsthand every time it rains. In fact, we make a joke, we call it Lake Broadus now. And if you don't fix it, we're going to stock it. But this weekend, for instance, and everybody who's been around that piece of property or that area knows that there's hydroplaning and all the dangerous things. So I will talk about that in the respect that somebody's going to get killed or somebody's going to get seriously hurt. But I did notice, because of the bike path being underwater this time, that people were trying to walk along Duck Road on the east side. So we got bumper-to-bumper traffic, people blowing horns and trying to get to the rental cottages, and tourists or whomever trying to walk and zigzag in and out of that traffic, trying to stay out of the mud puddles. And it was another dangerous situation where somebody could have gotten hurt. So my wife and I, again, implore you guys to think about that as a very serious safety issue and empower guys like him and the rest of the town to get it fixed before somebody gets hurt. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. Ursula Bateman. Good evening, Ursula.
I just wanted to talk about, I think it might have been Ann's letter that, Tom, you read maybe a month and a half ago about the problem on Duck Road, which I also think we have to do something. I will say that I don't think town funds should be used. It's a state road, it's a state problem. We can be there to help, to facilitate, but the state should buy that property, not our taxes. But I want to get back to this letter, which was fine, you read it, but I want to know what the policy is, because I'm going to go back about a year and a half ago. There was a gentleman that lives on Ocean Boulevard that came in to the town to a meeting. He wanted to read a letter from his parents. They were elderly. They lived in Northern Virginia. They tried to get down here. There was a snowstorm. They couldn't. They were concerned about the property where the Southern Shores Crossing is. I think they were concerned about the driveway that was going in. They have a house right across the street on the ocean. And they just wanted to present their concerns. They couldn't get here. He asked if he could, and he was told by council that he couldn't. He couldn't represent them. I also, around that time, had my friend Ann was going out of town. She had also wanted me to present something, and I couldn't. So I have to ask I'm not against council reading letters, but I think it's a little, I think we need to allow the people that come into this, take the time to come to these meetings. If we have friends that are sick, that can't make the meeting for one reason or another, it's only fair that you allow us to take our 3 minutes and read their letter. I mean, I don't think that's too much to ask. If council can do it, I think the people of the township should be able to do it too. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ursula. Tony Radomski. Good afternoon, Tony.
In the same vein of Ursula, I just wanted to say that a few months ago, a council meeting was canceled because Mr. Holland needed to be out of town. And so the mayor decided to go ahead and cancel the whole meeting. A couple months after that, Mr. Newberry and Mr. McDonald had to be out of town on business for a council meeting, and the mayor chose not to cancel the meeting. Again, Mr. Newberry is unable to attend tonight, and again, the meeting is going forth. So I don't understand the inconsistencies of when and how and why you choose to cancel or not cancel council meetings when a council member cannot be here. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ann Schwarzman. Good afternoon, Ann.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the Town Council, friends, noblemen, countrymen. I'm just interested in saying thank you, first of all, for your efforts on the budget, and in particular those that had to do with fiscal responsibility. I think that it's important as elected officials that you scrutinize the budget with the public interest in mind, with fair and objective analysis, and if you have any career experience in evaluating budgets, that you bring that to bear. I think in particular I'd like to thank Council Member McDonald and Council Member Newberry in absentia for looking fairly at salaries, salary grades, cost of living increases. These are items that should be supported by objective data, benchmarks of some kind. Salary grades are available. Cost of living increases can be tracked to consumer price indexes. So I think, bottom line, you need some benchmarks that are objective. You need to be fair and fiscally responsible. And I thank the members who did that during the last public meeting. I also would like to say about the East Dogwood property, the same thing. There should be fiscal responsibility here. If you're going to make an offer on this property, you should make an offer for fair market value, which is not what the property is currently priced at. It's grossly overpriced, and it's been for sale more than 2.5 years. Before you do anything, you should know what the comparable sales are in that area. You should do your due diligence, and you should offer only what is a fair market value, which you would do as an individual buyer. With public monies, you should be even more scrupulous about it, whether it's local money or whether it's state money eventually, if there is reimbursement. Finally, about the Skyline Road property, I have not walked it, but I've been inside of it, and I can tell you that when I was working back in college and waiting tables, I would not have stayed there. It was such a dump. And I stayed in some places that were fairly rough. So I'm very surprised at the figure quoted for renovation. I think it was something like $30,000. I don't see how you could even put a bathroom in for that, frankly. But I have heard sentiment in the community that people are interested in a senior center, a community center of some kind that would be staffed by volunteers. This is another idea to consider in lieu of a park. And finally, I would like to say that the 5-year plan that was suggested, I believe that came out of the retreat, and also it was brought up again at the last meeting by Mr. McDonald and Mr. Newberry, is good business and should be done without further delay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ann. That closes public comment for this evening. This time I'd like to call on Mike Fletcher, our South and East Dogwood Trail Task Force Council Chairman. Mike, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm just formalizing or announcing a preliminary recommendation of the Dogwood Task Force. This was previously sent to the town manager. I believe it was on the 14th of June. I'll simply repeat what was agreed upon by the task force. A physical survey should be undertaken as soon as practical, given the results of the recent task force survey showing clear support for the addition of a walking path along South and East Dogwood. and that a survey would necessarily have to be completed prior to any such additional work commencing. That is essentially our preliminary recommendation. Do you have any questions?
Council, any questions, Mr. Fletcher?
No, I don't, other than I agree with the survey.
Thank you.
Well, I had a question. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make the charrette, and I heard good things about it. What is your impression on kind of the feel of how it went? Is there any takeaways that we should know about, or is it just more of a discussion?
Oh, the workshop was to try to gather solution options from from residents, and I think we got a list of that we're still in the process of compiling. And what we're going to do is probably turn that around into another survey so that we can get impressions from the residents on whether they support or do not support those type of options. That is probably going to happen and be consolidated with sometime this month, probably in our next meeting. We're going to work on that. So I anticipate that we'll have at least another survey going out. And we've also brought up for discussion in our meetings the potential for another workshop, because there were 2 additional agenda items that, in the interest of time, we weren't able to get to. They were, based on the survey results, they were deemed lower priority because there wasn't clear support for them. I mean, they were listed in the survey results, but the other ones had much clearer support by the residents. So we may choose to do an additional workshop also. That hasn't been decided yet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate your time. Good job. Council, I need a motion to direct staff to contract for a survey of South and East Dogwood Trails.
I'll go ahead and make that motion, but as part of that motion, I'd like to maybe have discussion first to figure out how that process might work. So maybe can we discuss first?
Well, let's we got a second, we can, yeah.
Yeah, I'll second it so we can get the discussion moving.
Yeah, we can discuss it, sure. Leo, anything you want to add?
No, other than, the process of whether we're going to start on surveying, if it's going to be the whole road from East Dogwood and South Dogwood, or, and of course we'll have to go through who's going to do the surveying, and I don't know if that's a bid process.
I think I can answer. If I can't, Peter can always fill in if I leave something out. I think Peter will first have to put out for bid for surveyors to have somebody do the project. The project would include all of South Dogwood and East Dogwood to the ocean front, I would imagine, or at least to Highway 12. Peter, can you add anything to that?
Just very similar to what the council went through on its town engineer RFQ. The Public Works Director and I would put out an RFQ for the project, and we would work with Chairman Fletcher on particulars of the RFQ and get submittals back, proposals back from licensed surveying firms. Once we got those back, we would work, again, have Chairman Fletcher come in and make sure that we've got an adequate scope at all times, eyeballing the fact that council appropriated what it appropriated, and be able to pick from the submitters of the RFQ in accordance with the Minnie Brooks Act, and then make a selection and hopefully negotiate a contract that would take up the entire length. If it did not, then we would have to go back to first base and talk about doing sections of it. If it did not, everybody was proposing something over what the budget line was.
Could you give us a little information as to what, and I think I know, but maybe so that everybody can hear it, what the budget line was?
Yes.
And then how you arrived at
Council
that budget line?
appropriated $100,000 in the budget, and by your budget ordinance adopted, council prohibited that money from being spent unless you made this approval tonight for the project specifically.
Any further discussion?
I have some questions. Do we have a projected cost for the project?
When we got a estimate before, it was anywhere from 70,000 to 100,000.
I'm talking about putting the path in.
No,
No.
don't have any
Hasn't.
idea about a project yet.
And we can't really ask for that until we have a survey.
I understand that. And I guess my second question would be, is whether this council is going to be serious about supporting this plan once we go there. I mean, we're spending $70,000 to $100,000 for a survey. We get there, the cost, if it's prohibitive, are we going to be spending our money or spinning our wheels? I mean, are we going to be serious about supporting, putting a walk path down, what is it?
Well,
East
it-
Dogwood and Dogwood?
South Dogwood and East Dogwood.
Well,
Or
the survey's
just-
not just only for the path, it's for the whole project. Where's the road out there?
Well, is it including repaving the road,
Well,
widening,
we
whatever?
don't know that yet till we see where the road, because we know they're not always in the center of the right-of-way. And that has an
Mike
impact that has an impact on what we're going to do.
Mr. Fletcher, leave.
Yeah, Mike has left. But that was a discussion at their workshop.
Well, I guess my question is, if they're looking at putting a path or a multi-use path or using their survey, they're not looking at the total project of road cost and everything.
No. They're not.
Okay. So are we going to be supportive of that as something that we need to look at, because we're talking about spending $100,000 for a survey? I mean, that's a serious amount of money to me as far as putting it out there. And then we come back in a year and say, okay, we can't afford that.
I think rather than not be able to afford it, we might say that we can't make it work because we will find out from the survey. The survey may answer a lot of questions we don't know the answer to right now. And I think in order to be able to say definitively we can build a path or we can make a path work on South Dogwood, East Dogwood, we need to know what we're working with as far as the street alignment, and the
Well-
right-of-ways, et cetera.
I don't disagree with you, but we know we can make it work. It's just a matter of what we're going to have to take or what we're going to have to cut
Well,
down or
that-
what we're going to have
Do
to move.
do we have the will to do it?
Right.
Well, once the survey's done, we'll know exactly what the impact is, and we'll
But
have to decide whether
we
we have the
won't have
will or
any
not.
idea of the cost.
No, that will have to come after we find out where we're
And
at.
it's not in our capital plan is the other.
No,
Right.
that is
That's right.
not this year, that
That's
is
correct.
correct.
It just seems that we put the cart before the horse in moving these projects forward. They're not in our plan, we're not planning for them, and we're piecemealing them. And I just have a problem with that. My 2 cents.
Well, one thing that I think that's a good point you made about whether the will is there to do it, and I think I hear what the mayor's saying, that we don't even know what the extent is until we get the survey. The survey isn't going to go bad. So it is something that, you're entirely right, this could be expensive. And the whole project isn't, the whole project would be expensive. But that doesn't mean we have to do the whole thing in a year. And that very likely we would do it in multiple years. Like, we could do a portion closest to the ocean, and then over the course of maybe 3-4 years, go ahead and continue that path on through. But without the base information, they can't even do their work.
Right.
So from my standpoint, I'm comfortable with doing something, because I feel like the public safety, walking on those roads are so dangerous that somebody's going to get hit. A child's going to get hit riding their bike. We need to do something. I'm a realist in that we may not be able to do the whole thing. I agree, I hear what you're saying, but
Well, I understand but the point I'm making is, we have a capital street improvement plan, prioritized. We're going to vote on that again tonight. We're going to make a change on it. Dogwood's not even on here.
that, and I'll speak to that too, because I'm on the capital improvements committee, I'm on that. The reason why it's not on there is we're trying not to prejudge what the Dogwoods Task Force is doing. We're letting them do their work, and we're taking a little bit longer approach. I mean, we don't know when they're going to be done with their work. Right. And we have to approve these capital improvement projects in a timely manner. So yes, likely it'll be next year for some of it, but if we don't get at least the baseline of it started now, it won't even be next year. It'll be the year after. So there's a delay in this. While I wouldn't mind, I'm open to adding to that list, I think that survey is going to take a while. I mean, Peter, have we That's, that's a good deal of work.
It is. I speculate it's going to take close to a year probably to do what even a component of it. And I'm not sure we'll even get it done that quick, depending on what we get back in the RFQ.
I mean,
RFQs.
and let's say even in the best case scenario, we get something back in 9 months, we get a good survey back in 9 months, the Dogwood Task Force does their work, and they give us some recommendations to consider. Realistically, it's in next year's budget anyways. And then
Well, realistically, it's 2 years out.
perhaps, you could be right.
And that's realistic.
Can I speak to one of those points that Mr. McDonald made?
I'm sorry.
Can I speak for one of the points there?
Sure, yeah. Come up to the mic so everybody can hear you.
I understand your concern that we're putting the cart before the horse, but from our perspective, if we make any kind of recommendation, we're putting the cart before the horse. Because we don't know where the right-of-way lines are, we don't know, we just don't have any data. And I've been through every survey in the planning department.
Let me say this, I'm not discrediting anything the task force is doing. I'm
Oh,
just
I'm not
asking.
taking it as
I
that.
know. I'm asking some questions that, why is Dogwood not on our priorities? And we're putting a task force out there, why don't we have it on capital improvement? That's my point. And it
My
needs to be
understanding is
there
that
if,
capital improvements is a separate subject from,
street improvements.
yes.
And
it's-
that's what we're talking about, doing this in conjunction with improving that street.
Right.
And that's where I'm wondering what our timeline is, and is it even going to come up under my term on this board?
I'm hoping that the task force will be making recommendations before that survey is complete, because as I've told the task force that, and I'm only one of 8 people or 9 people on there, and you guys are the ultimate boss, but I see us as doing just kind of like a big picture, broad brush recommendation based on the best data that we can get. But ultimately, when the task force is done with this, somebody has got to make some hard decisions on designing that thing. So because it's such a hard, long lead time,
And paying for it.
excuse me?
And paying for it.
Yes, yes. But because it is such a long lead time just to even get the survey, that's why we, as a task force, was recommending to get it done.
Thank you, Jim. Gary, to go back to answer your question a little more directly, the Dogwood trails, South Dogwood, North Dogwood, East Dogwood, were on the capital improvement plan list since I was elected mayor and before. They've been there. And
Well,
we
they're
took them
down
off, we
around-
took them off there because we wanted to, for immediate planning, because we wanted to see what the task force suggested and recommended to us.
Yep.
Simple as that.
Well, actually, they are down there about 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah.
Right.
Which means that's 2 years out.
Probably, at least depending on cost
Yeah.
of the other
Yeah.
projects.
That might not be wrong. But that doesn't mean that the survey's not necessary now, to our point. I mean, I think if that's
Well, we
going
put the money in there, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
I understand that. But we still need to ask the question, are we going to be
to,
supporting what they give us?
that's going to, to a certain extent, that's going, in my mind, that's going to see what plan comes forward. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's a kind of a wait and see. I don't want to, let's let the Dogwoods Task Force do their work. Let's look at what they've done. Let's let everybody look at it. There'll be public hearings and we'll.
With the survey, they'd be able to tell where the right-of-way is, where the road is in the right-of-way or out, or not in the right-of-way, and what we can do to accommodate that. And without survey, they can't do that. They can't make a valid suggestion, except we'd like to have a trail. Well, yeah, where are we going to put it? And that's what the survey will tell us, if we have a place to put it or not. Any further discussion?
No, let's vote.
I'd call for a vote on the contract for a survey of South and East Dogwood Trail. All in favor, council?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion's made and carried to direct town staff to contract for a survey of South and East Dogwood. Thank you. This time, in just a few minutes, we're going to have a public hearing considering ordinance 2016-0701, an ordinance establishing a capital improvement plan with authority to implement for fiscal year 2016-2017. And that's a plan that's going to I'll give you the streets we prioritized for this year. Capital street improvement prioritization for fiscal year 2016-2017, as recommended by the CIP Committee on May the 19th, 2016. Yopon Trail, street rebuild due to asphalt failure, edge failure, continuing root undermining, bulkhead replacement, and the CIP Committee recommended phasing this because it's a pretty comprehensive undertaking. Not just the construction part, but some of the permitting could be quite involved. Wild Swan Lane, street rebuild, cracking, root upheaval, potholes, etc. Not to include the extreme south and north ends. Osprey Lane within houses 95 to 105. And it tells what you can't read it, but it says street rebuild, alligator cracking, root upheaval, and stormwater. And finally, Juniper Trail asphalt failure in the area south of the Juniper Culvert Bridge on both street and sidewalk. The total monies allocated for these improvements for this year is $516,000, same as we've been allocating for the past, I think, 5 years. This time, I'll turn the meeting over to our town attorney, Ben Gallup, for a public hearing. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a public hearing for the consideration of a budget project ordinance 2016-0701, an ordinance establishing a capital improvement plan with authority to implement for fiscal year 2016-2017. The only name on the list is Ms. Schwartzma. I'll call her in a minute, but I will ask the public to, after she goes, to raise their hand. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this public hearing, I'll call on you and have you come forward. Ms. Schwartzma?
Hello again. The only comment I would like to make is I would like to know how you get to this list, what the objective criteria are that you observe to come up with your prioritization. I don't disagree necessarily with the streets that you've indicated will have repair, but I don't really understand the order, and I wonder what the reason is behind your selection of different streets. I notice there's no mention of beach roads. For example, the low-traffic road on Ocean Boulevard, where tourists walk, and it's very narrow. It's an old road, but it doesn't seem to have any status in terms of your scrutiny. So, you know, Yopon, I understand. The others, Osprey and Wild Swan, they're small roads with very few residents on them. So I would appreciate an explanation of how you arrive at these priority rebuilds or whatever the construction will be, so I can understand it better. And if I may say a word about the survey that you just voted on, I think that there's value in that survey regardless of what happens, because then you'll have something definitive as to where the right-of-ways are located. So I think it's money well spent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak to the ordinance about capital improvements for 2016-2017? Yes, ma'am. If you could state your name and address, please.
Sure. Hi. My name's Lisa Horner, and I live at 149 Yopon Trail. And my husband and I built a home there. It's been about 4 years now. And I'd like to urge the council. I also wonder how we jumped from, I think last time I looked, we were lower on the list. Last time I noted we jumped to the tippy top. We moved to Yopon because it is a quaint one-lane trail, and we're drawn to the lovely nature of the slow movement of our cars on that street, watching out for neighbors. We love it there. I just want to encourage the board to, or the council, to delay your vote tonight, not jump to already deciding that this is going to happen. We met with the mayor and several folks in a little chilly night about 2 years ago, I think, on Yopon. And I kind of felt like, I know how I felt, that I don't really want anything done right now. We've had 4 homes, including ours, built in the last 4 years, which is, it happens, people build houses, we know that. But it's been a lot of construction going on there. We've been living through that. I just encourage that. I don't know what the urgency is about Yopon. I know that it needs work. I don't want emergency vehicles not to be able to come and get us. While I've lived there, I've never witnessed an experience where no one has been able to get to us or get back out again. I do understand improvements have to be made, but I really urge your council to look at all the different things that have to be done in our neighborhood and I agree in improvements and I applaud you for all the work that you do. But I just urge you not to vote tonight to please let the neighbors who did come to the meeting and say, we like it this way. We watch out for each other. We go real slow, and that's why we like living there. So, yes to improvements, but 2 lanes and phased in for the next how many years? I don't know. I just really encourage you to think again and talk to us a little bit more. There's only a few of us that live on Yopon. It's not that many people. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this public hearing? Ms. Radomski?
I wasn't going to say anything, but after she spoke, I just have to say, let's not make this Fairway Drive all over again. And these poor people. And again, it would be very nice if it was a full council that was on that would be able to vote on this. I can't see why we can't table it until we have a complete vote with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the public hearing? Seeing no one, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you, Ben, for taking care of that. Before I ask council for a motion to approve the CIP plan, including Yopon, I would mention the fact, or state the fact, that we see Yopon as being a multi-year project, probably at the very least anyhow. The replacement of the bulkhead is going to take probably at least a year, or as far as the funding can be made to work. And don't see street improvements happening there. I don't, at least for another year or more. At least that's what it looks like, and that's going to depend a little bit on permitting and what's required by CAMA as far as what we have to do with the bulkhead. So we're putting on the list, and we want to do what we can do. Nothing may happen this year. We don't know yet until we see what happens with the CAMA permitting. Peter, anything you want to add to that, or you might?
Well, just
give
will
some more
add for
detail.
the council information, there was also a second property owners meeting that was well attended by most of the people on the street at that time, that occurred here at the Pet Center. And preliminary design was reviewed at that point in time as well, just for information.
And Peter, and I know in our CIP committee, we talked about this, but talk a little bit about the CAMA approval process, because it isn't short, and that's part of the reason it's on the list, is that this is going to take some
Well,
time.
as the mayor spoke, the first item on Yopon that is a threat is the bulkhead itself. The fact that service vehicles have never been able to have a complete turnaround at the end of the street was a concern. We had the existing property owner at the end of the street was complaining about service vehicles damaging her property. So one idea is to seek a CAMA major permit to widen the existing land right-of-way owned by the town there, into the canal, another 2 feet in addition to the 2 feet that would be recaptured with the with the bulkhead repair. That would allow for the town to have a larger turnaround at the end for service vehicles and hopefully address the complaints that occur there. To do that, it would take a major review, a CalMA major review, so that's why the time is built into that during the first year. So if that went as described, the bulkhead work would be done the first year, the engineering design work congruent with the CalMA major permitting, so that could take a good portion of the year to do that.
And and when we discussed it, it's a significant amount of cost for the bulkhead itself.
Yes.
So that, to that point, I mean.
Yes.
Just to repair the bulkhead is a major endeavor, and to get the permitting. So I don't envision this happening in a quick manner by any means, but if we don't get the ball rolling on it, nothing will ever happen.
The other concern was about the width of the street, and that has not been finalized. We've ideally, in order to qualify for Powell bill money, a 16-foot wide street would be nice, not required. If the residents there want a 15 or a 14 or a 13-foot wide, if they want to
12 foot.
are willing to live with that, I think we could tolerate it. We haven't said anything that's in concrete. We just know it does need to be improved, and it won't do any good to go in there and repave it. We've tried that before, and it hadn't lasted very long. So I think that they're all decisions we'll make as we move forward. We haven't set any of this in stone. We just know that that bulkhead has to be replaced. There's no question about that. And we'll take the street from one step at a time after that. Does that answer your questions about where we are with this?
Mr. Mayor, may I make one more follow-up
Sure.
comment to my comments? Yes, we fully intend, staff fully intends to have another informational meeting on the site to update from the previous two at Yopon, as well as the others if the council approves this tonight. The standards that the council did adopt for its street rebuilds do allow the designer flexibility in a number of areas, and one of those, of course, is the width that we had entertained in the preliminary design, as you spoke to. That was a 16-foot, but currently the asphalt is 12 feet from side to side in most places along the street. So if it is the sentiment of the property owners during the pre-design meeting, that could be adjusted somewhere between 12 to 16 feet.
I think the big issues here are getting in and out, that little curve at the top of the hill. When you come around, you can't see it. At night, you're pretty good, but in daytime, you're taking a real chance. And the turnaround at the end of the street for service vehicles and emergency vehicles, if you will. So those two are the areas of the biggest concerns. And I think the width of the street, whether it's 12 and a half or 15 and a half, I don't think that's something we're going to fight anybody over. At least that would be my plan.
And my concern too would be just making sure that, it's a matter of time before somebody needs an ambulance or a fire truck. So what is the minimum we need to get those life safety trucks there? And it's going to happen, and I don't know what that width is, but we want to make sure that the roads are safe. Last thing we want is somebody going the other way on it, and then a fire truck can't get through, and that would be tragic, and somebody could get hurt. So we've got to find a way to do that, but I'm not sure what that would be. That's not really what we're voting on today. It's just to be able to begin that process.
Keep that street on our schedule. Council, I'd like to have a motion to adopt ordinance 2016-17, establishing a CIP plan with authority to implement for fiscal year 16 and 17.
I'll do that if you fix those bumps in the bridge on Juniper.
We're going to get to that in a minute. We'll address that.
Other than putting a sign up that says bump.
Well, we're trying to work on the bottom of it. For those of you who are coming down, the car's bottom out, that's on the list.
That's actually, I could ask Peter to address that because it's part of our CIP list. And would you want to talk to that?
Yes, I will. As council knows, that's our culvert replacement was a design, well, actually it was a rebuild by the Department of Transportation on behalf of the town. There was no engineering by the town on that replacement. We knew when the top was paved the first time, very shortly thereafter, it was going to continue to settle. DOT came back and redid it for us again. We knew it was going to settle again. So what our plan is for this coming year is to try to bid these projects out. Hopefully, with the phasing of Yopon, we can cover all these with the 516. If not, we would go ahead and actually pull up the top again on Juniper, repack it, and repave that with street repair money, if we can't get it into the 516 for this calendar year. That was the plan all along for this calendar year.
Yep.
Oh, excuse me, this fiscal year.
Can I also address, Ms. Schwartz asked a good question, how things got on the list. And truthfully, we have in our CIP meetings, the public's there. I think at our last one, Leo was there in the audience and Fred was there in the audience. So it's a public meeting, it's publicized. We encourage all of you to come. And I know Rachel with Public Works helps us. She keeps a very good eye on the roads, and also she has a sense of if we can tackle some little projects. So in terms of the list, sometimes you'll get a little project that's thrown in because we can do a repair very cost effectively or in-house. But the big projects like Yopon take a little more planning. But in general, we want to hear from you what street projects you want done. So please tell us. Some of these, Gary and I go down that same road. A lot of people go down that same road. Like I can tell you that's a particularly bad area. Your car bottoms out every time. Some of them are smaller streets. You're not wrong about that. Yopon, there aren't a lot of people on Yopon. But at the same time, there's that tension between serving all of the community, even those people on smaller streets, and the bigger ones. Unfortunately, the bigger streets tend to cost a lot more money. So you can do a lot more smaller streets sometimes within the budget. That doesn't mean we don't do the bigger streets too. We just want to hear from everybody if there's a street that you want done. So absolutely, we're open to putting stuff on the list. It moves around a bit. It'll move around from meeting to meeting as numbers come in and as priorities change.
But I'll add to that there are specific things that we look for. Alligator cracking, root upheaval, shoulder edge failure. There are specific things that we see, that if we see that worsening on a particular street, we try to address it. We don't just go out and say, this street looks like it needs work to me, I'll jump on that bandwagon. There's some very, very technical things that Rachel has furnished to us as CIP members that we're to look for. And if we don't see them, then we're more inclined to back away from that street. One of the biggest issues we fought over the years was how do you prioritize relative to traffic use? How many people use that street? And it's important. And I think you can't neglect or ignore the fact that a street like, for example, Sea-Oats gets a lot more traffic than Scuppernong, no question. But if you only did the streets that get traffic, you'd never get to those residences on Yopon or Scuppernong or other side streets, parts off of Bayberry. They'd never be addressed. And those people living on those streets are paying the same relative tax rates that everybody else is paying. So we're trying to somehow strike a balance there where we're looking out for those people who live on little used streets, at the same time accommodate the more heavily traveled streets. I have a motion on the floor to adopt ordinance 2016-17, establishing a CIP plan with authority to implement for fiscal year 16 and 17.
I'll second it.
I have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Same sign. Motion is made and carried. Thank you. Under old business, which is where we are now, consideration of staff presented options for maintenance of town real property at 7 Skyline Road and possible council action. Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council, as indicated several meetings ago, staff would present to you several options for maintaining the property at 7 Skyline Road that the council authorized to be purchased last May of 2015. These are recommendations. As you know, it is zoned government and institutional. It sits contiguous to both other government and institutional properties as well as a commercial property. This structure on the property was built approximately 50 years ago. It is in bad condition. When the town acquired this property, there was a tenant in the property, and she moved out in March of this year. And since March of this year, we've indicated that we would come and evaluate the property and give the council some ideas of what to do with the property, at least for now. One option that the council would have is to leave the structure in its current and substandard condition. We could try to secure it, keep people out, keep critters out, and keep the air conditioning somewhat going, and the property, we imagine, would continue to go downhill with accumulation of mold. The other option is to renovate this structure sufficient to try to get tenants in there. It is a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. It is in tough shape. We did get one contractor's estimate for the bare minimum and he had recommended $20,000. I imagine it would probably cost more than that to get something substantial in there at market rent, as was spoken to earlier. The third option that we presented was to demolish the structure, and that would include the smaller structure. We looked at the smaller structure thinking that possibly we could use that as a satellite shed for Public Works, but it just won't work for that. Seeing that the council did authorize the property to be acquired to be combined with the town hall complex and remain government and institutional for future planning, for some future use, the property could be demolished, rough graded, and maintained in its natural state. And that's what, that of course would entail the demolition and removal of the septic tank and the septic drain lines. And then just rough graded, kept in its natural state. We're not proposing any further use other than that, because obviously it's council's decision as to what to actually use for the property. But with that, we recommend that it be combined, maintained as combined with the town hall complex. That is option number 3. And those are the 3 options that we came up with.
Council, I'd ask for a motion to direct staff to dispose of the existing structures, option number 3, and hold in abeyance any further action on that property and make a decision later what we want to do with it. I would note that as part of that proposal would have to be an authorization to $11,000 appropriation from the Capital Reserve Fund in order to accomplish the demolition. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Suggestions, recommendations, thoughts?
I hadn't seen it. I don't know. I can't really speak to it. I did note that a couple of people spoke to it tonight, and Ms. Ringwald spoke about a green space, demolishing it and developing a park type, and we do not own anything like that. And then Ann said something about a community center, and I think that might be something our community might need. So, but I'm not sure. I'd like to see that structure before I'd say keep it and try and renovate it, and I haven't been in it.
Yeah, I've seen the structure, and as far as I'm concerned, it needs to disappear.
I think anybody who's seen it been in would probably say the same thing.
Okay.
And as far as, future use, that can be determined as whether we put a park, senior center, or whatever may go in that, could potentially go there.
Has, Peter, for the shed, for Ms. Pat's comments, for the shed, is there any value to that?
We have no use for it. One thing that we did look at was the fact that the shed is sitting on a concrete slab, and we did get that price to take out as well. We were hesitant about the concrete, wanted all the concrete to come out.
Yeah.
We don't have any, the Public Works does not have any use for the shed.
Okay. And I think I'd agree with Ms. Schertzma that the cost to repair anything nowadays is awfully expensive, and I'd hate to throw good money after bad, and I think this is good for council to discuss later on what we want to do with it. I think we've got an opportunity to do something nice for the community, and what's there now isn't that great, and it's not really helping
Yeah,
anything. Let's do something.
it just eventually deteriorates and begins to impact the whole neighborhood. And I did make one time rebuild a house for my parents, and what it started out at and what I ended up at were 2 different things. So I do have a little experience in playing with those things.
I think regardless of what we decide to do in the future, that we have to consider the impact on the neighbors. And I think that the lower impact we can make, the better. An open space right now is pretty low impact. And I think if we can keep it that way until we need the property or decide to combine the property with town-owned property adjacent to it, we're smart to do that. I think it was a good investment to take advantage of it when we did. And I think the idea of some kind of a walking path down through there, ultimately, might be something we consider, but not.
Well, we won't be, we'll have to make sure the Suffolk Shores Realty would agree to that one.
Yeah, right, exactly. And they
We could
might.
connect with Chickahawk. They have a right-of-way on the canal,
Right, at the Spindrift, yeah.
and work it in to where you have a walking path from the marketplace and here and back through, all the way through the neighborhood. So.
So that's not out of the realm of possibilities.
The only other thing I'm going to ask, I know we're doing this historical stuff, Peter. This is not a historical structure, is it?
We checked on that. I was fooled in the beginning.
1950 is what it said built.
Yeah, I was fooled in the beginning with it. Everybody kept telling me it was originally a flat top, but apparently that was not the case. But it is it is 50 years old or 60 years old, no question. But I would just say it's government property, and it is in a dilapidated condition. But it's certainly something we did look at that. I was concerned that it had been an original flat top, and we did talk to the community foundation, is next door, and they, of course, maintain historic property there as well. And I want to make sure it was not. So it was not a flat top, but it is old.
So council, my motion is, on the floor is to direct staff to dispose of the existing structures, option number 3, and authorize an $11,000 appropriation from the Capital Reserve Fund in order to accomplish this demolition.
Which one's option 3? Because I only have 2.
Now, at the bottom, you're on page, under tab 3,
First page,
first page of tab 3.
right there.
Is that the one from East Coast Abatement?
Yes, the pricing is.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, number 1's leave it. That's not an option.
No,
Well, we got a motion on the table for 3, so let's move on.
Not a good option.
Not a good option, agreed.
Can we all agree on that? So I'm all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Anybody opposed? Nay? No? Let's see, motion is made and carried, guys, thank you. At this time, I want to hear from our engineer on the conditions in area of intersection of East Dogwood Trail, North Carolina Highway 12. Possible council action, of course, once we've heard from Mr. Deal, and later on from Mr. Jennings from NCDOT. Andy? Good evening.
I was
Look,
making sure that
it's going to work.
PowerPoint ended up there. Okay, how do I scroll?
This is Andy Deal, our new contract engineer for town, and he's been working on this project now 6 weeks.
Early May, I think, is when we
Yeah.
got started with it. Thank you for the introduction. Thanks thank you for the contract, and I'm enjoying being the town engineer. All right. Back in early May, the town approached Deal Engineering about performing an analysis of what's happening at the NC-12 Dogwood Trail intersection. We all know what's happening in terms of we have a flooding problem, but the question really was, how much water is coming to the intersection, and out of our options, what options do we have to address it, and what options make the most sense from a cost-benefit analysis? Just a brief statement of existing conditions. I'm not accustomed to having PowerPoint right over top of me. There is an existing low point on NC 12 just south of the intersection with East Dogwood Trail. The contributing drainage area actually, and that's the area where water flows to this point from, actually consists of NC 12 to the north and south of the intersection, as well as East Dogwood Trail all the way up to the top of the hill as you go west. Existing drainage infrastructure is minimal. There are some very minor swales in some different locations along the edge of the road, but for the most part, there's not anything there. The runoff during normal or any sort of significant rainfall event, the runoff pools in the southbound lane of NC 12 and sometimes crosses over even into the northbound lanes. And the only way that this water leaves the area is by infiltrating into the narrow strip of grass that exists between the asphalt trail and NC 12. It's 1 or 2 feet. All right, just graphically, this is the drainage area, the fuchsia line. NC 12 is running vertically on the page here. Dogwood Trail is running to the left and right, north is up. One point that I want to make is that this is not just an NCDOT problem. It's very much a combined problem. You can see graphically how much of East Dogwood Trail flows down to the bottom of the hill and then over to the low point. You can also see that along NC 12, as well as along Dogwood Trail, there's water from private properties that flow into the DOT right-of-way. So this is a joint problem. It's the town, it's DOT, and it's our private property owners. A breakdown of those areas is what I have shown here. East Dogwood Trail, we've got about 3.2 acres. NC 12 to the north of the intersection, about 2.71 acres. And NC 12 to the south of the intersection, about 2.56 acres. Roughly 50% impervious. All right, based on those drainage areas, I did a simple method runoff calculation. This is assigning runoff. It takes the impervious percentage of the drainage basin and assigns runoff to the area based on the amount of impervious, the amount of permeable. And I broke it down by sub-area, 2,400 cubic feet of runoff for a 1-inch storm event from East Dogwood Trail, 4,500 cubic feet from NC 12 north, and 4,000 cubic feet from NC 12 south. So for a 1-inch rainfall event calculated, I have a total of 11,081 cubic feet. Now, we were lucky enough that during the study, right when I was doing these rainfall calculations, we actually had a rainfall event that was close to 1 inch. And I was able to get up here right after the rainfall, right after the heavy rainfall ended, and able to observe and document what happened, at least roughly document what happened. Oops. Okay, I'm sorry I didn't keep you all up with where I was. All right. Observed rainfall event, and you can see this is standing at the intersection. The light pole is right there on the left-hand side of the picture, and so you can see where we've got cones sitting out to keep people in the road, and you can see the water's all the way across the yellow lines into the northbound lanes, the turning lane in the northbound lanes. This was a 0.93-inch rainfall event. And that picture was taken about within an hour of the end of the heaviest rains. I then did a comparison between the calculated runoff that I'd calculated using the drainage area and the simple method, and what I could estimate was the volume of water sitting in the road at that point when I took that picture. And so when I back calculate from my 1-inch runoff down to 0.93, I've got roughly 10,000 cubic feet of runoff that I calculate coming to the intersection. Roughly estimating what I observed, I think I had about 7,000 cubic feet of runoff sitting in the intersection. in the world of stormwater runoff calculation, that's actually pretty good agreement. And I'm happy that I'm on the conservative side of what I observed. There are, my runoff calculations didn't take into account those minor swales that do exist. There are other, let me go through these really. They don't take into account the small amount of water that was caught up in the minor drainage infrastructure. There's terrain undulation, that trap runoff that it doesn't really show up in the runoff calculations. Classically, the simple method does tend to overestimate runoff for the Outer Banks because of our soils. Our soils are more permeable than the calculations typically account for. And in this type of calculation, the actual volume ponded, or in my observation, the actual volume ponded was a coarse estimate because I wasn't able to actually get survey measurements of the ponded water. Ran out, took the picture, did my best to estimate in CAD and in the survey I had what that spread was and what the depth was. So, as I mentioned, moving forward, I actually am going to use the simple method runoff calculations for the rest of my analysis. As I stated here and in the study, if you want a less conservative assessment of calculated runoff versus what we can get through improvements, you can take the runoff calculations that I present and multiply them times 0.8. And that gets you very close to the observed estimate. So, going to get to actual possible improvements. Before I do, I wanted to present this little spreadsheet of runoff from statistical storm rainfall events, because I did the 1-inch storm and then I extrapolated it into different storm frequencies. And these are from NOAA Atlas 14. These are our statistical 1-year, 2-year, 5-year storms. One of the nuances when we talk just casually about the 2-year storm or the 10-year storm, there's a time component to that as well. And so you actually don't have one 10-year storm, you have multiple 10-year storms that can occur, depending on how long of a storm event you're talking about. Critical for what we have here, because we really have a flush of water coming down and then sitting, and we have really good soils that if we could get the water over into those soils, we will be able to dispose of it, we'll be able to infiltrate it. The 1-hour storm events are really the important ones for assessing what we might do. All right, go back to that real quickly. As I talk about these, really the 1-year storm event here at 16,900 cubic feet is an important number to keep in mind, because we really, that's the benchmark that I think that we're going to be able to make with certain improvements. All right, just a brief statement about potential drainage improvements. We are not blessed with the opportunity to pipe this water somewhere and get rid of it. As we all know, that location doesn't, we can't run a pipe over to the canals, we can't run a pipe over to the ocean, so we're going to have to dispose of it in place. That means that our only options are infiltration systems. All right, first I looked at what sort of improvements we might be able to get along Dogwood Trail. Dogwood Trail has a wide right-of-way, it has a center median, it has space. Working against it, we have quite a bit of relief. As you head west, it's hard to pond water on a hill. So the lowest hanging fruit on Dogwood Trail is the north side of the road in the last block between Wax Myrtle and NC-12. It's light on the screen, but the existing contours go across East Dogwood Trail at an angle. The water actually, as it's coming down East Dogwood Trail, does actually flow towards the north side of East Dogwood Trail. So that's, and the road is actually shifted to the south. So we have this nice open space, or open space if we clear all the way to the right-of-way, so that we can put some infiltration swales in there. And that's what I've depicted here, is 3 infiltration swales that step up the hill, because that's not truly flat, it does go up a hill. What I was able to find was that those three-tiered swales that I had shown there will yield about 800 cubic feet of stormwater storage each. So it's a total of 2,400 cubic feet. And again, back to that one-year storm number, that was close to 17,000 cubic feet. So we can knock off about 2,400 cubic feet of it here with swales along the north side of Dogwood Trail. Points of interest about this is that the installation is primarily a grading exercise. It's a relatively low cost to put these in. The work is located entirely within the right-of-way, nothing to purchase. There is the potential for utility conflicts, although that potential is relatively small because these aren't deep. This would require that the tree line be cut back to the right-of-way. The tree line does extend over into the right-of-way through at least a portion of that area. And particularly for the first year, this will require diligent maintenance. We need to establish a really good stand of grass in these basins, or else they'll just fill back in relatively quickly. A cost estimate for that, it's estimated that those improvements would be in the neighborhood of $5,000. So again, low-hanging fruit. We can pick up 2,400 cubic feet of storage for about $5,000. All right, the next opportunity we have is for swales in the NC-12 right-of-way. Now, NC-12 to the north of the intersection has a trail on the east side of the road. To the south of the intersection, it has a trail on the west side of the road. So those two locations aren't ideal. To the south of the intersection, as well, on the east side of the road, the water, there is some water that will get there, but the water really seems to be flowing towards the west side of the road. So the best opportunity for the biggest impact is north of the intersection on the west side of the road. I have the turquoise line sketched in here. This, as opposed to a stepped swale basin approach that I took on Dogwood Trail, is much more just a classic swale, a V swale. And allowing for a 6-foot shoulder, a 1-foot deep swale, 3-to-1 side slopes. We can get 750 lineal feet of swale, roughly, taking out for driveways and so forth. And it's going to provide us with about 2,000 cubic feet of storage along there. Points of interest with this, again, it's primarily a grading exercise. It would be a relatively low cost. Work is located entirely within the right-of-way. There is a potential for utility conflicts, just as with the other one, but again, we're going down a foot. There's not a high potential. It would require that the tree line be cut back to the right-of-way line, and I don't think that's as much of an issue along NC-12. And as with the previous one, quite a bit of initial maintenance to make sure we get a good stand of grass growing, and then periodic maintenance to clean out the sediment that's going to collect in there. I spoke with NCDOT about a cost estimate for installing that, and the neighborhood of $3,000 is the number that we talked about there. So again, 2,000 cubic feet, $3,000. That's a pretty good bang for our buck. And we are now at 2,000 cubic feet on NC-12, 4,400 cubic feet. Again, the one-year storm event, the one-year, one-hour storm event is 17,000 cubic feet. So we've made a dent, but it's not a big dent in that number. So that brings us to our third infiltration option. And this is the vacant parcel that's located in the southeast quadrant of the intersection, south of the fire station. And this is not owned by the town, this is in private ownership. But we performed the task, we surveyed it and performed the task of laying out an infiltration basin on it. Shaded in green around the edge. The property's probably about 50% covered in tree canopy right now, moderate sized live oaks. And around the perimeter, I worked my grading to protect those and keep them. There were 3 in the interior that I did the exercise of going around them and then did the exercise of not going around them. And we lose about 1/3 of the volume of the basin when we try to save those 3. So the 3 trees that I'm talking about removing have the X's on them. Everything else around the perimeter are shaded in green. We're going to cut back and protect those. The graphic that I showed you, the grading plan that I showed you, yields an infiltration basin with a capacity of 15,000 cubic feet, roughly. Now we're up there, we're hitting our 1-year storm. We're actually getting close to the 2-year storm if we're able to do this option and do the swales in the right-of-way. Points of interest on this one, again, it's primarily a grading exercise. It's a relatively low cost. I'm sorry. Large volume of runoff available, or runoff storage available. It does require the installation of a drop inlet and a storm sewer under NC 12, and that is a more significant cost. The drop inlet's on the left-hand side of NC 12, and the heavy bold line going underneath NC 12 is the storm sewer going over to the infiltration basin. And the other item is the vacant lot will have to be acquired by the town. It's with DOT's participation. Cost estimate, the drop inlet and culvert, again, I spoke with DOT about this, and they said to budget in the neighborhood of $50,000. And the big reason why is we're crossing NC 12 and all of the traffic issues we have with that and all of the potential utility conflicts we have with that. Our lot improvements, because it's primarily a grading exercise, we're looking more in the neighborhood of $32,000. And the land acquisition, that, I don't know what that would be, but that would be a significant cost in the big picture. So really, 15,000 cubic feet of runoff storage. This is definitely more expensive than the options in the right-of-way, but we can't get there with the options in the right-of-way. If we want to really have an impact on storms where NC 12 is not going to be filling up with water on a regular basis like it does now, this is where we need to go in order to accomplish that. We can help ourselves by doing the right-of-way improvements, but to have a big effect, we have to do an infiltration basin here or somewhere else, and this is really the only available space. Wanted to talk really quickly about nuisance flooding versus the big flooding problem. When I was out there for the big storm, for the 0.93 inch storm, it's not that big, there was definitely water flowing across the intersection from, across Dogwood Trail at the intersection. And there's a low point in the southwest corner of that intersection where water just ponds and it spreads out into the road a little bit. And then it trails on along the gutter there, the curb there, down to our larger low point. Even after a storm event ends and water's not flowing anymore, there's still going to be water sitting in the intersection, particularly at that southeast corner. I label it nuisance flooding because we don't have quite the same life safety issues with that as we do the water further down in NC 12, because people aren't hitting this water at high speeds. It doesn't have the depth. It's certainly inconvenient. It certainly can be a safety issue if somebody comes through the intersection from Dogwood Trail too fast, but doesn't rise to the same level that the NC 12 flooding does. To address this, there's only one option to truly address it, and that is if we install the infiltration basin and we have that storm sewer going under the road, is to put another drop inlet up here at our low point and a storm sewer down to the drop inlet that we're installing as part of our infiltration basin. In fact, to really address the intersection, I would put a drop inlet on the north side of the intersection as well, and a pipe, so that we have collection points off of our roadway in both corners of the intersection. That is going to be expensive, probably on the order of $50,000. Let me go back. If we don't do that, we can at least address the smaller storm nuisance flooding problem we have in the southeast corner of the intersection by coming back behind that low point and digging a swale back behind that. Water will still fill up that swale during a storm. It's still going to spread out onto the road. By having that space back off of the road, though, it's going to pull down a lot quicker than it does today. It's going to, and we won't have to, or we will have at least some storage off of the road. So, in terms of addressing this, what I would recommend is if we get to the point that we're doing contracts and trying to make decisions about design, I would include a design that includes all of that storm sewer to fully address the problem. And I would include it as an ad alternate on the bid, understanding that we can address our big flooding problem without that storm sewer, and then it becomes a cost decision. So just to summarize, this is our 1 hour statistical rainfall table, again, that I had earlier in the presentation. And I just want to point out to you again, 1 year storm, 17,000 cubic feet, 2 year storm, 20,000 cubic feet. And then underneath it, the options, the Dogwood Trail swales, the infiltration, the NC-12 swale, and the vacant lot infiltration basin. You add all of those storage available numbers up, and we are getting pretty darn close to the 2 year storm event, the 2 year 1 hour storm event. It's our estimated costs for all three items. We're at about $90,000, but that does not include the land acquisition cost. It also doesn't include the storm sewer to go across and pick up the entire intersection on either side of Dogwood Trail. Really quickly before, first of all, let me make sure that is everything. Yeah, that's everything. All right. One other point that I want to make that I failed to during the presentation is about our actual capacity of the stormwater basin. If we install that, we're going to be flowing water into it throughout a storm event. While we're doing that, water's also leaving the system by infiltration, and we have incredible soils for infiltration systems. So that's one of the reasons the 1 hour duration storm event's really a key event to talk about, because when we talk about a 24-hour storm event, our runoff volumes are much higher, but it takes 24 hours. And so for that entire 24 hours, we're also losing water from the infiltration basin. And so the actual capacity of the infiltration basin is much greater as we go to larger storms. That's everything that I have. I think DOT.
Thank you. There may be some questions for you, Andy, before we ask Jerry to come up.
Okay. That's
Leo?
The vacant lot infiltration basin, that's the 15,000. We're not, if that was the option, we would not be doing the swales then, would we, on Dogwood and NC-12, or is that?
I would recommend doing them all just because of the cost.
So we'd be doing the swales plus the...
Correct. It's just, in scale of budget and so forth, those are, we get a big bang for our buck there, and I would recommend definitely doing those in addition to the infiltration basin.
And we'd still have the maintenance to do on those swales.
Correct.
Now, the swales on 12, would that maintenance be the town's responsibility or NCDOT?
Classically, that would be DOT's responsibility, but I'll let them speak to that.
This could be a negotiation point.
I'd just remind all of you all, Andy talks about 15,000 cubic feet of water. You're talking about 7 times that in gallons, a little over 7 times that. So you're really talking about whatever 7 times 15 is. Pretty good number of gallons of water you're dealing with in a 1 inch rainfall. It's pretty significant. I think, having been involved in this now for since February, I'd like to have Jerry add his thoughts to it, and we can kind of talk to both of you at once if we need to, and let him address what you've said.
Can I, one thing for Andy then?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I think it's important, we're shooting for that 2 year number, and we're going to get close to it, but it's important that, I think that members of the public understand that if we get a rain event that is a 5 year event, there will be water there.
Yeah.
If we get a hurricane, there's going to be water there.
Let me expand on that just a little bit. When DOT met us, when DOT met us on site, one of the questions was asked was, "Can you fix this?" And the response was, "Well, how do you define fixing it?" There will always be a storm event bigger than what we can design for. And that's why it's important to look at this table and to understand the statistics behind it. You know, the one-year storm event can happen 3 times in 2 weeks. It happens. It's all statistics. It gives you some idea of what to expect. Now, one of the big things, one of the big improvements about the infiltration basin is even if the system is overwhelmed, we have the 5-year event, the 10-year event, the system is overwhelmed, the water backs up onto NC-12, we're going to be able to get rid of it a lot faster now, because now we've got 10,000 square feet of sand that we're pouring that water into. You know, even the water that's on NC-12, it'll go through the system and hit that and infiltrate, as opposed to a 2-foot wide grass strip, which is what we have today.
I have nothing but the potential of the pipe going across, how much maintenance would be involved in keeping that open? How's that going to work?
Again, that's something that's, the maintenance of the pond and the storm sewer it's going to be something that has to be worked out with DOT.
Yeah, but I mean,
but physically, it's going to be, it's a storm sewer in a road. It's going to require periodic maintenance. In this drainage shed with these soils, what does that mean? It's,
you know, sand running around.
I've certainly seen them that haven't been maintained in a decade or more that still function. I would expect yearly maintenance would be appropriate. And that means popping the top off, digging out the sand that's in it, hauling it away.
Now, would there be sand going into the pipe itself, going across the road?
Typically, and this is again something I would have to work at this, we're getting into construction details, but typically on a system like this, I would make the drop inlet deeper than the pipe, have a sump in there, and actually have holes in the drop inlet so the water can leave that system, but so that heavy sediment stays in that drop inlet rather than going into the pipe.
Did you, can you go back to that southwest corner? I think
Yes.
you said southwest.
So,
Is that East Dogwood and 12?
yes, East Dogwood is running roughly horizontal, 12 is running north-south.
And the trails on that side, did you look at a raised trail and putting a swell underneath it for that?
Not specifically for the, no, I explored for the big flood problem. I explored that, and it's not low-hanging fruit. It's quite the opposite. It's expensive. For that, yes, we could get an enhancement by doing something subsurface there
Because
for
that's
that
all-
location as well.
That trail takes up a lot of the right-of-way. It takes away a lot of the area for water to go down into the ground. And I'm just thinking, like they did in Rodanthe, they raised the trail and put the swell underneath, and it gave a place for the water to run. And
If we were going to, assuming that we do an infiltration basin,
Right.
all of the discussion changes about what to do if we don't do that. But if we do the infiltration basin, the work and cost involved in doing something under the trail would probably be similar to just putting in the drop inlet and piping over to the storm sewer that goes underneath, that goes underneath NC-12 and to the infiltration basin. Another point, another thing that has to be worked out with DOT, typically when I do storm sewer in this type of scenario, I would do a perforated pipe, a double wall perforated pipe with a sleeve. So even though the storm sewer is conveying water to the infiltration basin, water is also infiltrating out of the storm sewer at the same time. So you kind of get a double effect. It's basically taking the system that you're talking about, and instead of it just being dead end, just going ahead and connecting it up to the infiltration basin.
Looking at your map that you had, which shows back several slides, and there's a lot of, there's some property down there.
What, the overall
Yeah, the
aerial?
overall, there's area down through there that, plus the other side. I understand what you're saying. Just looking for the most for the buck.
Yeah,
I mean, we've got,
The other side of the road, I didn't, we can put it due to the low cost. And I got an email from DOT that spoke to this. Due to the low cost, we likely will end up putting a swale on the east side of NC-12, south of the intersection as well. The trick is that that doesn't receive the bulk of the water. It does receive water that's over there, but more of the water is coming to the west side of the road there. Again, once we start pulling up the trail, then we're into costs that are going to exceed the cost of the infiltration basin. It's something, if we need to examine that further, we can. But in my hierarchy of coming up with options, it was further down the list and it didn't warrant being explored because the big number, first of all, it takes a lot of that type of system to equal 15,000 cubic feet of storage. It's just, you know, the geometry of having something big and open and deep, it just, it's, basically, if the land isn't available across the street, then we will look at that.
but that's the low points of the, when you're out there, that's the low point of the lay of the land, even if you cross to the east side, that side of the road
But
just seems to be the low point.
that's why we have
it's there.
our low point ponding there, yeah.
And it doesn't pond to the other side, it ponds on the west side.
Correct.
And that's just, you know, I'm just thinking if we could take that out, we could help a little bit there. That might be
If
maybe a
we,
thought down the road.
yeah, if we, yeah. It's, if we need to go there, we can.
We're a ways from a final design. I understand. I think that goes without saying. We've discussed before the meeting some other options we had. Instead of having just one pipe going across the highway of a certain diameter, possibly two pipes crossing over in a smaller diameter would carry the same volume of water, but give you kind of a fail-safe feature. The swale, the drop inlet at the intersection of the Dogwood Trail with some kind of a curbing that would allow the water to go in that drop inlet and proceed down to the main crossover lines. They're all things that are going to be addressed as we move forward, I think. If you're, unless someone has more questions for Andy, I'll ask Jerry Jennings from NCD to come up and address us and answer any questions we may have from him. Jerry, thank you for coming out.
Yes, sir. Well, good afternoon, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. Again, my name is Jerry Jennings. I'm Division Engineer for NCDOT, for those of you that I haven't met. Also want to recognize Wynn Bridgers, who's our Project Development Engineer, who's been very involved in this issue as well. Thanks for the opportunity to be here, and thanks for the opportunity to partner in this project. It's a very unique situation. It's not a typical drainage problem, as Andy mentioned. We can't just go in and put in a bigger pipe or go clean out a ditch and solve the issue. We're kind of at the bottom of a bowl. And at the bottom of the bowl, there's an intersection and a turn lane and a multi-use path, and it's all covered in asphalt. So there's very little area for the water to infiltrate. So the whole effort here is to try to find a way to get that water to somewhere where it can infiltrate and get out of the road, which is our primary goal here. We have worked closely with Andy as he has gone through this process. We've had our hydraulics experts from Raleigh down here, met on site a couple times. They've reviewed Andy's proposal and made some comments, which he's incorporated, and we're very supportive of the plan that's been put together. We think it'll be a tremendous improvement. It won't solve everything, but it'll go a long ways to improve the situation we have now. Even in bigger events where we may get some water on the road, it's going to go away a whole lot quicker. We've got so much more opportunity for that water to infiltrate that it's going to be a tremendous improvement. And as the mayor said, as we work through final design, we can try to identify some of the nuances and try to design in a way to get a very good final product. From a maintenance standpoint, certainly DOT is prepared to deal with whatever is in the right of way, the swales, the culverts on the roadway, the drop inlets, those sorts of things, and we can certainly partner with the town in how that interfaces with the basin and how that's maintained. Certainly details there, but we certainly are willing to deal with the maintenance of the system within the right-of-way, and certainly work with the town regarding the basin. I am glad to say that the department has approved $150,000 towards this project. That has been approved by the Board of Transportation, so we're excited about that, and we look forward to furthering this project and working with the town to move it forward. Thanks, sir. Unless
Thank
any
you,
questions.
Jerry. I didn't want to steal your thunder by mentioning the money first. I'll let you do that. Any questions for Jerry? Appreciate your time tonight.
I just want to thank,
Yes, sir.
thank Mr. Jennings for working with us so much to make this happen, and as well as kind of putting some funds in there. It really means a lot for a small town. We've got a relatively tight budget, and this is a great partnership, I think, to get us all on the same page, to solve a problem that affects all of us.
Absolutely. Excellent partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry, for coming out and talking to us about this. I would add to what Mr. Jennings said. By the way, they've been unbelievable to work with. When I first contacted them and sent them pictures, I got a response right away, and they've worked right along with us for the last, gosh, I don't know, 6 months now it seems, or maybe longer. And I would add to what Jerry said about the money. We have no guarantees for this, but I've been assured by Senator Cook's office and by Mr. Representative Tynes' office that they're going to do the best they can to help us also. We don't know in what amount exactly, but the initial numbers they're striving to find for us would help pay a significant cost to this project, if not all of it. So we don't know that's going to materialize. I can't guarantee what's going to happen at the state legislature level, but I can tell you what you heard what NCDOT had agreed to do. So we're halfway there at this time. And I think we can probably be a little further along as the legislature moves on in our favor. Any further questions?
Just a comment that, we worry about it here with the water this time of year, but we've had challenges there in January and February when it's frozen, and we've had people hit that. That's probably the biggest concern I have, is somebody spins out on that in the wintertime and hits a tree or something, and then we would have some issues to deal with.
Yeah, it really was bad last year a couple of times in the flooding.
Yeah,
in
I
the
know.
cold weather.
I made a call to the state police on it once.
No further discussion, Council. I'd like to ask for a motion to authorize the town manager on behalf of the town to make an offer, to negotiate, and require at a price no greater than the current list price as of 7/5/16, the vacant property at 29 East Dogwood, using a portion of the funds council has budgeted for the NC 12 East Dogwood Trail intersection stormwater flooding project.
Are you talking about the listing price?
I'm saying to make an offer no greater than the current listing price.
Okay.
And the first thing I said was to negotiate and acquire at a price no greater than the current listing price as of 7/5/16, the vacant property at 29 East Dogwood, using a portion of the funds council has budgeted for the NC 12 East Dogwood Trail stormwater flooding project. That's the motion I'm making for your consideration.
I will second that.
I have a second. Any further discussion?
I'd like to also, and I think a point was made, Schurzman mentioned it, and I'm sure Peter will do this, but let's get the best price. I mean, that goes without saying. We want to, this property has been on the market a while, and I trust that you'll do it, but, let's negotiate and let's begin that process, and to see what it really is worth.
Thank you, Chris. Leo, anything?
No, I want to make sure we are tough negotiators. That's the main thing, which I know Peter is.
I would say the tax value, and they just gave me that today, is $180,006. I think that's where we should kind of draw our line as far as what it's worth. I mean, everybody wants to list it at a higher value than it is, and this thing's been listed. I would put that out there. We should probably stay within what the tax value is on that house, or that property. There's no house on it.
I think that's a good starting point. That's
Well, I would start lower than that, and that would be where I would max.
Well, it depends how you start it. Sometimes you can start at 80%. If that's the case, you'd be somewhere between 155,000 on the listing price to a low of 144 on the tax value.
I mean,
So I'd be somewhere in between there.
let's let Peter do that. I don't
Yeah,
think we should do that.
we don't
I
need to-
think
we
this
don't
is the
need to get
place-
into
I don't think this is the
negotiation.
place to negotiate a price in.
And I know he'll do, studies of what's been around there, sold around it, so I just think we need to let him do his job.
Just like the trash contract. We got a really good trash contract by working.
Yeah, I think we have to trust our town manager to negotiate this. I think that's all I want to say about it. I think we have to see what he comes back with, and we decide as council if we wanted to work with it or not at that time. Any further discussion?
No, let's vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed, same sign. Motion's made and carried to authorize the town manager on behalf of the town to make an offer, negotiate, and acquire at a price no greater than the current list price as of this date, the vacant property at 29 East Dogwood, using a portion of the funds council has budgeted for the NC-12 East Dogwood Trail Stormwater Flooding Project. At this time, I'd like to ask for a second motion to authorize staff to proceed with the final design and construction in partnership with the NCDOT of this stormwater remediation project as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I'm basically asking Peter to go ahead and proceed, and staff to proceed with the final design and construction in conjunction with our town engineer and with NCDOT in a partnership to continue to address the stormwater remediation projects as presented to us. I have a motion and a second.
I say let's go. I mean, if we're
All in
gonna
favor?
do it.
All in favor?
Aye. Motion's made and carried. Move ahead, Peter, with this project. Subject to, of course, to acquiring the property.
Yes.
No new business. I'd call at this time for the town manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council, I have a quick report tonight. The 5 years of budget projections that the council was directed staff to develop, we should have those ready to send to you by mid-July. Of course, as we stated, the historical data has always been available. We compiled that and working on the 5-year projections now, so hopefully by the middle of July, we'll have those sent to you.
I thought we agreed on 3.
Go ahead.
I thought we agreed on a 3-year budget.
Three-year projection.
Excuse me, 3 years. 3 years of projections, correct.
Now, have you?
5 year of historic data.
Peter, may I interrupt? Have you been, has Mr. Newberry been, or Councilman Newberry been in touch with you to go over that yet? Or I know that one thing we talked about in our last meeting was that he was going to work with you on that stuff.
We have not, and he is not, and what we plan to do is email the 3 years of projections with the 5-year history to each individual council member in July, and welcome any council member to come in, including Mr. Newberry at that time, and let council do what it may with that.
Okay, and I know that he had a particular interest in this, and he
Right.
needed some extra knowledge. If you could reach out to him and try one more time to
Okay.
get him in there to talk to you about it, that'd be great.
The flood insurance preliminary maps were released on June 30th, 2016. The town website has expansive information on that. They were, the way it works at this particular point, there is a 90-day appeal period, which has not been declared by FEMA yet, but that will be upcoming. And then after that, there'll also be a 6 months compliance periods where municipalities will have the opportunity to adjust their flood ordinances. It's projected that the flood ordinance would be in place in about 18 to 24 months. At that point, it would become final after all these processes occur and Dare County would adopt. But that would only be after our opportunity to appeal anything in there, as well as any of our citizens. But again, that particular time period has not started yet.
So that's from the time period that it starts would be 2 years? Is that about right?
Could be.
Could be 2 years?
It could be up to that. Somewhere between 18 to 24 months is what is projected.
What do you, in looking at the maps, what have you seen as an impact generally?
The only thing I have seen, there are a lot of properties in Southern Shores which are no longer in a flood zone.
Right.
So that's all I've seen. There'll be an informational meeting with staff and some of the potential historic property owners in Southern Shores on July 26th at 1 p.m. And we've invited the State Historic Properties Office to come as well to brief the property owners at that time. We have about 14 property owners who have expressed an interest in council's initiative to explore that as a program. So, and again, I just repeat from last meeting that CodeWright staff is scheduled to come back in September with a draft code assessment for its contract work for this next fiscal year to modernize the town's code of ordinances. So we're looking at September for that. That is the report I have tonight, Mr. Mayor. I believe the police chief covered everything I wanted to cover on traffic. He elaborated on that, and that's basically what happened over the 4th of July weekend. As I had reported earlier, we drew Memorial Day and July 4th to work that intersection. So we got the draw.
Yeah, I heard us a little bit on being able to enforce our own traffic control systems here in town, but we are doing our part on the intersection. I'm getting a lot of public comment, or a lot of positive comment about that intersection police presence out there, from tourists as well as local people, saying it makes a difference coming around the corner when you can keep going, at least till the traffic stops on Highway 12 north of there. I have nothing else tonight. This time I'd ask individual council members for their comments. Leo?
The only thing I was remiss at our last meeting, thanking our staff for managing the 2015-16 budget, and also their work in developing the 2016-2017 budget. So staff, thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Leo. Chris?
I'll also thank staff. They did a great job. We've got a budget that's balanced with no new taxes. We've got the lowest taxes on the beach, and we're still providing great services and doing big projects too. I mean, from our Dogwood project to potentially in the future some paths, which is a good thing. Also want to thank Chief Limbacher. He hosted me and took me around the firehouse. Told me a little bit about how his operation works. I encourage Gary, if you get a chance to go, and Fred Newberry, it was really great to kind of see what equipment they have. I underappreciated how much they do, and until you go out there and see it, it really was impressive. He's got a good organization. He's got a good team. So I want to thank him publicly for his time. And that's it.
Gary? Thank you. Town Attorney?
I don't have anything, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask that we go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A. Section 1, to consider adoption and or release of actual and or draft closed session minutes which are privileged or confidential pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.10E. And Section 6, to consider a personnel matter regarding individual public officer or employee. I need a motion for them to do that?
Yes.
I'd ask council for a motion to go into closed session then.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This time we'll be in closed session. I don't know for how long. After we leave closed session, we'll adjourn the meeting. I don't expect you to be here. We're going to take about a 5-minute break.
Yes, we are.